The Romans called the Mediterranean Sea our sea. They proved their right to this name in sea battles with the Carthaginians, Greeks, and other opponents. Suddenly, however, they themselves challenged Rome's maritime supremacy with Cilician sea robbers. The Romans for a long time did not consider them a serious opponent, but eventually the pirates made them bitterly regret this mistake. Piracy in the Mediterranean appeared with the beginning of navigation and maritime trade. Up until the emergence of international law, the distinction between merchant, pirate, and warrior remained purely nominal. As soon as there was a convenient opportunity to improve their business, the merchant was not afraid of sea robbery and kidnapping. The pirate also had to put on the guise of an honorable merchant to sell his loot. In coastal communities, piracy was closely intertwined with mercenarism. The largest mercenary markets were at the same time considered to be pirates' nests. The roots of this phenomenon lay in the primitive socio-economic way of life and in the abundance of a restless population. Some states patronized pirates in order to gain superiority over their opponents. The Phocian Greeks held the upper hand in the western Mediterranean. Off the coast of Africa and southern Spain, the Carthaginians indiscriminately sank ships trying to find a way to the Strait of Gibraltar. The Etruscans raided Sicily until the Syracusans broke their maritime power. As time went on, piracy became increasingly seen as a crime. The great maritime powers that patronized trade made more or less successful attempts to destroy piracy. To this end, the Athenians legally limited the crews of merchant ships to 5 sailors. A squadron of 60 ships, annually sent to sea, forced the pirates of Egada to stick to the coast. The decline of the Athenian maritime alliance after the Peloponnesian War and the beginning of an endless series of wars of the Diadochi after the death of Alexander the Great led to a revival of piracy. Another stimulus for the development of sea robbery was the flourishing of the slave economy, which needed a constant influx of new shipments of live goods. This need was largely satisfied by pirates who kidnapped people and then sold them at slave markets on Delos and in Puteoli. Attempts to combat this evil were unsuccessful. The piracy of Illyrians, Cretans, and Cilicians became so widespread that Rome, the new hegemon of the Mediterranean, had to use military force to combat it. The Romans themselves indirectly contributed to the development of piracy on the southern shores of Asia Minor, when after the conclusion of the Peace of Apamea limited the power of the Seleucids over these territories. As a result, there was a political vacuum and flourished brigand gangs. In addition, after the establishment of a free trade zone on the island of Delos, huge profits began to bring slave trade. In one day, Delos could take tens of thousands of slaves, and the pirates had no problem with the sale of live goods. The authorities willingly provided their harbors for pirate ships, and also allowed them to sell in their markets people captured during sea raids. The pirates had numerous bases in Crete and throughout the Mediterranean as far as the Balearic Islands and Gades. The power of the pirates especially increased after the First Mithridates War. The Pontic king Mithridates VI Eupator challenged Rome's dominance in the east and formed an alliance with the pirates. In his fleet of 400 triremes and many lightships, fast pirate myoporons played a very important role. Thanks in no small part to their support, the Pontic fleet dominated the Aegean Sea and the coast of Asia Minor. When the war was lost and the king made the Peace of Dardanus with Rome, the crews of these ships were out of work and began to plunder indiscriminately sea and land. The Romans felt responsible for what was happening and tried to limit the lawlessness as much as possible. They sent to Cilicia the praetor Marcus Antonius, who conducted military operations there on land and sea. Against the pirates was the consul Publius Servilius Vatia, who had under his command 4 or 5 legions, as well as a large fleet. In the first stage, Servilius had to fight at sea against the pirate leader Isidore in the triangle between Cape Malea in Greece, the eastern end of Crete and Lycia. Having won, the Romans landed on land and besieged another famous leader, Xenicetes, on Mount Olympus in Lycia. When the defenders of the fortress ran out of food, Xenicetes burned himself and his family alive, as well as the collected wealth. Servilius captured a number of fortifications pirates in Pamphylia and Pisidia, successfully fought with the tribes of the mountainous part of Cilicia. After a long and heavy siege, he managed to take by storm and destroy impregnable strongholds Brigands Old and then Nuisaurus. For the victories, he was proclaimed emperor and received the honorable nickname Isauricus. Despite all the victories declared by the Roman commanders, the number of pirates seemed to multiply. Previously, the pirates kept to the eastern waters, but now their ships began to appear off the coast of Italy. The pirates partly burned and partly captured the fleet prepared against them, and the consul who commanded them was forced to stand on the shore and watch the fire, powerless to do anything about it. On another occasion, they kidnapped the praetors Sextinius and Belinus, together with their servants and an honor guard of bodyguards lictors with fascias and axes. The brigands ravaged estates near the sea and robbed travelers on the great roads. From a country villa near Myson, they kidnapped the native daughter of Anthony of Crete. After long negotiations and a series of concessions on the part of Antony, he ransomed her for a huge sum of money. Provincial fleets, which were entrusted with the task of combating pirates, were at this time in a sorry state. Cicero painted a depressing picture of the viceroyalty of Gaius Verres in Sicily. Starving rowers and soldiers who did not receive wages fled in droves to the mountains and plundered there. Ships went to sea with half-staffed crews. The position of Navarch Verres gave the husband of his mistress clear means. Wishing to get rid of his rival as soon as possible, the governor ordered him to lead the fleet to Pahin Cape, where the ships of the pirate leader Heracleon were spotted. Instead of the prescribed 2 days, the ships reached Pahin 5. Here Cleomenes drank in his tent, and the sailors gathered roots of wild palm to satisfy their hunger. At this time, pirates with 4 ships swooped in. Abandoning the other ships to their fate, Cleomenes escaped on the flagship Quadrireme. The pirates burned 2 of the ships and massacred their crews. The rest were able to escape and catch up with their commander at Gelora, halfway to Syracuse. Here Cleomenes landed and returned to Syracuse on foot, while the pirates burned the discarded Sicilian fleet on the sand. Then, marveling at their own audacity, the pirates moved straight for Syracuse. Their ships, according to Cicero, scoured the sea in front of the city's forum and waterfront. The Senate decided to send again against the pirates praetor Mark Antony, giving him extraordinary powers. Very little is known about Antony's activities. At first, he apparently fought pirates off the west coast of Italy, off the coast of Sicily and in Liguria, seeking to ensure the unimpeded supply of bread to Rome. Note that this was happening at the same time that Verres was viceroy in Sicily. Against the background of the overall dismal picture of Antony's successes can be assessed as very modest. He transferred the hostilities to the east, to the shores of Greece. Here he demanded from the Cretans to break friendship and alliance with the pirates, but received a strong refusal. Cretans have long been in the share with the robbers, provided them with their harbors and ships, and Roman threats were not put on a dime. Antony declared war on the Cretans. He was so confident of victory that he took the trouble to load the ships with chains for future captives. At the crossing, his fleet suffered heavy losses from the enemy. Many ships were lost, and their crews were taken prisoner. The Cretan commanders Lasfen and Panar returned to the harbor of Cydonia triumphant, decorating the bows of their ships with chained Roman prisoners. Having accomplished nothing, Antony died in Crete. He was succeeded by the Senate, who sent the consul Quintus Caecilius Metellus. Unlike his predecessor, Metellus was an energetic and determined man. At the walls of Cydonia, he fought the army, which had gathered Lasthenes and Panarus. After a fierce struggle, victory went to the Romans. The Cretans locked themselves within the walls of the city and held the defenses there for a long time. Eventually, Metellus forced the city to surrender, promising to pardon the commander of Panarus. One by one, the cities of Crete surrendered to the victors. The last to lay down arms was Knossos, where Lasfen, who had fled here from Cydonia, held out to the last. For his victories, Metellus received the right to celebrate in Rome triumph and honorable nickname Cretan. While Antony and Metellus fought in the east, in Rome again began food shortages. Under pressure from the starving common people, the Senate granted extraordinary powers to Gnaeus Pompey. In his full power went to the sea, islands and coastal strip up to 50 miles deep. Anywhere in case of need he could call for troops, money or ships. These powers were unprecedented in their scope and showed well the degree of danger the Republic was in. Pompey was well aware that it was not the number of troops and money or the titles of his officers that would decide the outcome of a battle. The pirates, by the way, had far more men and money. He needed a plan of operation, and Pompey was able to choose the best version of it. He began by dividing the sea into 13 districts, entrusting each to one of his subordinate commanders to equip ships and armed detachments there. Having discussed with the commanders of the details of the operation, Pompey secretly arranged fleets in their places, and on the agreed day and hour began the general attack on the main pirate bases. Pompey himself went to sea with the best part of the available to him military vessels and cleared from the robbers' Sicilian, African, and Sardinian waters to first of all to make possible the delivery of bread from these provinces in Italy. The cleansing of the Spanish and Gallic coasts was carried out by his subordinates. The thick Roman comb combed the pirates out of the hiding places where they tried to find escape. There was nowhere to run. The squadron of Plotius Varus had cut off the western half of the Mediterranean from the eastern half, and Terentius Varron, who had captured Corcyra, deprived them of the possibility of refuge in the labyrinth of islands and skerries of the Adriatic. In only 40 days, the piracy in western waters was done away with, and Pompey was able to proceed to the most difficult part of the operation. Informed of the fate of their western brethren, the pirates did not hide, and, having placed their wives and children in impregnable castles in the mountains, awaited his approach off the coast of Cilicia. The decisive battle took place at the fortress Coracesi and ended with a complete victory of the Romans. After that, Pompey landed on land and one by one began to destroy the strongholds of brigands. Those who laid down their arms were offered the mildest terms of surrender. Soon, most of the pirates refused to continue the hopeless struggle and hurried to lay down their arms. Just 3 months after the start of the operation, the war was successfully concluded. All outlaw fortifications had been destroyed, arsenals devastated, and shipyards burned. The spoils had exceeded the highest expectations. Many of the men captured by the pirates were freed. Executing for fun only pirate leaders, which numbered several hundred, Pompey used the power given to him and declared amnesty to all others. For the settlement of captives, he allocated a number of abandoned cities in Cilicia, the main of which was Soles. Pirates captured in western waters were assigned Demas on the northwestern shore of the Peloponnese for settlement. Pompey's experiment was clearly a success. About a decade and a half later, seafarers, according to Strabo, traveled in complete safety. Trade and all the usual contacts flowed normally, and instead of the former famine, abundance reigned in Rome. During the civil wars, which soon broke out, pirates again felt impunity, and maritime robbery again reared its head. Many pirates served under the banners of Sextus Pompey. His Victor Augustus in his memoirs boasted that he had cleared the sea of sea robbers, and captured runaway slaves returned to their masters for exemplary punishment. The cessation of wars in the age of the empire had a favorable effect on the development of seafaring. Pirates, who occasionally made themselves known, were no longer a serious force. Augustus established the Misena and Ravenna military squadrons in Italy, and a number of provincial squadrons in other parts of the Mediterranean to combat them.